Happy Sunday, y'all. I'm Jason Colthorpe. Welcome to Flashpoint. Good show this morning. Professor Chris Kobus and Chad Livengood are here to talk about the seemingly AI data center invasion in Michigan. Plus, developers Mark Bennett and Orrin Goldenberg are with us, along with Brandon Lockhart from the city, to talk about Detroit's most iconic ruin. How will their vision for the old Packard Plant site thrive when others have failed? We're going to talk about it all right now on Flashpoint. All right, before we get to those discussions, let's dive into some new poll numbers out this week from MEARS. The poll conducted by Mitchell Research surveyed 261 likely Democratic primary voters and 255 likely Republican primary voters. And let's start with the race for governor, where these numbers have to be very disappointing for the majority of the field. Starting in the Republican primary for governor, Congressman John James lapping the field with 48%, followed by former Attorney General Mike Cox at 11%, former Speaker of the House Tom Leonard at 5%, and Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt just 2%, with 33 undecided. The Democratic primary also lopsided. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson leading Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist 48-12, with Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson coming in at 5%. 35% still undecided in this race. Now, Mayor Mike Duggan is running for governor as an independent. Here's a glimpse into that potential showdown with the other two leaders. John James would be up 37-31 on Jocelyn Benson, with Mike Duggan in third at 18%, 14% still undecided there. Now, the U.S. Senate race, much closer. On the Democratic side, would-be primary voters have Congresswoman Haley Stevens ahead of the race, 27-24 over Mallory McMorrow, with Abdul El Sayed a close third at 16%, 33% still undecided there. Now, in a potential matchup with Republican Mike Rogers, who's unopposed on the other side. All three are trailing, but it's very close. Rogers leads Haley Stevens 42-40. He leads Abdul El Sayed 41-38. And he's ahead of McMorrow 44-38. And finally, two questions on job approval. Governor Gretchen Whitmer has a 55% job approval to a 43% disapproval. But it breaks down to a 37 strongly approve to 32 strongly disapprove. And what about the president? President Donald Trump slightly underwater with Michiganders on his approval rating at 47% approving, 51% disapproving of the job he's doing. Why don't we try and find something that is unifying people all around the state? And that's massive AI data centers. We saw another protest this week over the one that's proposed in Saline Township. I'll bet there's a lot you don't know about these centers that are already here, and now there are more that are trying to gobble up mass amounts of farmland around the state. Why don't we all get enlightened right now on Flashpoint? Joining me this morning at the table, Oakland University engineering professor Chris Kobus, and from the Detroit News, Chad Livengood. Guys, thanks for being here. A hot topic, no doubt, when we talk about data centers. And Chad, let me start with you. I want to start with the business part of this, and Professor, then we'll get into kind of the people part. They're not new to Michigan, data centers. We've seen a lot of them, just maybe not as big as what's being proposed now. Why are we suddenly seeing the influx or the interest of the big ones right now?
Well, the big ones are being driven by this push to build out a massive infrastructure, $1 trillion investment across the industry into more data center capacity. But with that comes a need for more electricity. So there's kind of two industries converging here, and so the energy industry sees major opportunity like it hasn't seen in a long time. And then there's real estate developers that are getting in on the deal. Down in Saline Township, it's being orchestrated by Related Digital, which is a company affiliated with the billionaire for Stephen Ross, a major University of Michigan donor, owner of the Miami Dolphins, big real estate developer in New York. This is a whole new area that real estate development is getting into, and so now you're seeing also farms being put up for sale essentially, and that's what's going on in Saline Township. Literally a multi-generational family farm being put up for sale to build a massive data center that will require 1.4 gigawatts of electricity, which is the equivalent of almost 1 million homes, which would be essentially all the houses in Macomb, Oakland, and Monroe counties combined.
I'm sure you got that info by using AI.
I used ChatGPT to figure it out this morning, which is run by OpenAI, which is one of the companies that wants to build this data center in Saline.
The irony of having this discussion. I want to talk about the grid at some point too, but Professor, all of those things that Chad talked about, and people see this, I don't want to look at this, or this is using tons of electricity, a lot of our water, our resources. We hear them now kind of speaking up at these meetings that they don't want these. But we need these. They're already part of our lives, and we need these data centers, correct?
Yeah, and the people speaking up about it, the organizations speaking out against this, are themselves creating the demand for them. We're talking digital services. Anybody that has a cell phone, uses cell phone apps, has a presence on social media, anybody that streams any kind of content, shows, movies, Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon Prime Video, 4K TVs. They are already using data centers. They've been using data centers. They're going to continue to use data centers. And I'll tell you, if this data center doesn't go here, it's going to go somewhere else. Ohio and Illinois in particular are very welcoming to data centers. These are multi-billion-dollar investments.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to the Great Lakes, Michigan's actually lagging when it comes to data centers. And Chad, just kind of run us down where you mentioned Saline Township. I know there's Howell Township. I believe Augusta Township is dealing with one, but there's more all over the state. What are the kind of the statuses right now of the ones in the Metro Detroit area?
Yeah, the one in Howell Township is on pause because of a moratorium the local township planning commission put in place. I live in Howell, so there's been a lot of opposition to that one. But then the other one in Saline is moving forward and could be approved for the electricity plan related to DTE Energy's request to the Public Service Commission, a 3-person panel that is appointed by the governor of Michigan that regulates utilities. And right now, the Michigan Public Service Commission is probably one of the most powerful entities in Lansing, and everyone's paying attention to what it does and how it handles this application. It's a gigantic electricity increase, and DTE.
And we know the Attorney General is watching this closely
DTE says they got the capacity right now, but then there's going to be questions if more of these come along down the road, how much more new electricity generation will be needed from and what sources. So there's a whole host of different policy questions that come along with that. Plus, the Attorney General is getting involved because there's been a continued upward increase in rates. Sometimes 7 to 9% increases asked almost on a year-to-year basis, and people have noticed that. I mean, you can go back almost 25 years and see there was stability in electricity rates for the 80s and 90s in the state, and then they just went straight up, and people are feeling that. In this conversation about inflation and affordability, this is a hot topic, and it likely will be a hot topic politically in 2026.
For sure. And Professor, we'll get back to the grid. There's a lot of people looking at it and they go, well, the grid's strained. DTE can't handle all of this, but you think it can?
Easily. We have the infrastructure, we have excess capacity, DTE does, and they have some infrastructure they could just turn on for things like this. They're not going to have to build a new plant. We already have the transmission lines. We're just ready to go. Data centers already exist in the Detroit area. We have at least a dozen in this area, several dozen throughout the state. This is just another one. Yes, it's big, but again, it's needed, and if it doesn't go here, it's going to go somewhere else.
And people talk about, like, when it comes to the farmland, would they be as upset if this was a subdivision or an auto plant? Well, sometimes that comes with the economic influx in jobs. How many jobs are we talking about could be created with a data center?
Yeah, with the data centers, there's going to be jobs, and it scales with the capacity. 1.4 gigawatts, we're talking a lot of chips, a lot of computers, a lot of servers. So there's going to be jobs because people are needed to maintain the facility, maintain the computers, maintain the infrastructure, grid, and that includes jobs over at DTE.
And it could be permanent and temporary jobs too, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I
right,
mean,
Chad?
the construction of this kind of facility is like 1.6 million square feet. It's equivalent to building an auto plant in size. And so they're saying there's gonna be like 2,000 construction jobs, which is kind of comparable to when you build an auto plant. But then at the maintenance end, it's about 300-400 jobs, which is about 10% of what an auto plant would essentially create if you were bringing an auto plant on board. So it is not nearly the number total long-term jobs, but then there's other areas like energy production and DTE and all the various delivery of the electricity. And one of the reasons that these data centers are coming to the exurbs or the outskirts of
Suburbs,
suburban
farmland.
urban area
Yeah.
is because they are in close proximity to high voltage power lines, and that makes the delivery of the electricity cheaper than if you were to try to plot this down in some old, let's say, former auto plant. Buick City is a classic example in the heart of the east side of Flint. Everyone wants to redevelop Buick City, but Buick City had self-generation electricity on site when in its heyday in the mid 20th century. They didn't have power lines coming directly there, like they're crossing across, essentially central Washtenaw County, and that's what the appeal for this site in Washtenaw County is.
Let me finish with this. A question for both of you. Professor, let me start with you. People talk about the AI bubble. It could pop. There's worries. It might be more of a Wall Street thing, but say these all get built wherever they want throughout Michigan, and that bubble does pop one day. What happens to these big data centers?
The data centers are going to be used. The demand for data centers, even if AI wasn't coming along, is still needed. People just are demanding, individuals, organizations are demanding more digital content. Some of the biggest companies in the world, and we're talking the NVIDIAs and the Microsofts, OpenAI and others, they have more demand from their users. So even without AI, we have a growing demand for it. I don't think the AI bubble is going to burst. Half the students at Oakland University are proficient in AI, more so than most of us professors.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Final 20 seconds, Chad.
I'm a newspaper guy. I'd love to go back to analog and everyone reading papers, and I'm still an old-fashioned guy who has an antenna and pulls in the Lansing television stations from my home in Howell.
Oh, you're that guy.
Yeah, I'm that one guy. Yeah. So, but I didn't. Then I turn over to watch WDIV on Hulu because I want to, and whatnot. So, nonetheless, like the change has happened, and it's going to be hard to ever turn back, as Chris points out.
We certainly are going to be discussing it, especially into an election year next year. Chris, Chad, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Flashpoint, stay with us. More to come. There are plans to revitalize the old site of the abandoned Packard plant, and the two developers determined to make sure this time it happens the way we hope are here to chat about it, as well as Brandon Lockhart with the mayor's office in the city of Detroit. Oren Goldenberg and Mark Bennett are with Packard Development. Is that the name of
Packard
it?
Development Partners, yes.
I mean, that spells it right out. We know
Exactly.
Mark, tell me about just the idea here and what people can expect. It's exciting when you try and talk about this site. We call it the most historic ruin in Detroit.
Right, and we're beyond the ruin. I think the mayor has counseled us to get beyond that because we now have an opportunity to essentially leverage major new industrial investment and jobs and restore existing buildings. So the key is, instead of knocking down these buildings, the mayor was focused on preservation, and we've come up with a plan to combine those development activities to really move this site forward and create a special destination for the city.
Oren, it's about 60% of the site, correct, that you guys want to develop here? And talk to me about what you want to put into that 60% there.
So the majority of the site is going to be a new Class A industrial building, about 400,000 square feet, looking at 300 plus jobs. And then the existing building of 116,000 square feet, we're looking at putting in an indoor skate park. We're working closely with Community Push, Detroit's skating initiative, Museum of Detroit Electronic Music being led by Adriel Thornton, and Make Live Housing.
That's exciting, and I'm sure. Have you gotten any? What's the feedback from the neighborhood been so far?
Very positive. I mean, they've been through a lot. I mean, this place has been vacant for 70 years. There's been several false starts, as you know.
Yeah.
I think people think that the feedback that we're getting, this is a practical approach, that it seems doable, and this is very much a team activity in terms of, we call it a public-private philanthropic partnership. So everybody is sort of moving in the same direction. And I think they're cautiously optimistic would be the best way. But they're a critical part of this process.
Yeah.
We're just now starting to engage with the neighborhood.
False starts is an interesting way to put it. Brandon, let me bring you in here. What did the mayor's office kind of do here to kind of make sure that this succeeds where we've seen some other efforts fail?
Yeah, I think from the mayor's office perspective, we've looked at this project as an opportunity to continue to grow our interest in the neighborhood and focusing on those developments that also consider the areas that they're going to. When you consider places like Michigan Central and Fisher Body,
Yeah.
they're not just job creators, but they're also hubs for the community and the neighborhoods in which they exist.
The hurdles have to be huge when you're talking about a site as big as what the Packard Plant was.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Like you guys have seen, right, a lot of false starts as mentioned before. We've done RFPs, we've gotten proposals for projects that we didn't really think fit for what we were looking for the site. This opportunity does that, right? Like we've been working together for quite some time to figure out how to get this done. You know, I think a lot of times you see the projects are announced, but you don't see all the work that went in the background, the years of development and figuring out, you know, who's the right person to make those things happen.
And I'm sure you got a lot of input from lots of different areas here. Take me inside the brainstorming sessions and like the inspiration, and I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this started with Mayor Duggan at the grand opening of Dream Detroit. He sort of invited us to take a look at this. So really it started with his vision. Me and Mark started working on it. Then we started working closely with the DGC and the mayor's office, Brandon and Brittany. And we brought in Albert Kahn and Associates, the original architects of the building. Right. Brought in this amazing architect friend of mine, Craig Maldonado from New York, who does adaptive reuse. We've been working with the skate community, and you know, it's an ever-growing team.
Yeah, and if I could, a very important partner has been the Detroit Regional Partnership, DRP, and their focus is on getting industrial sites ready for development. So they gave us a significant grant that has really pulled our due diligence work ahead about a year, and they're continuing to support us. So this is a very broad support. And as I mentioned a bit before, we're getting contacts from people whose grandparents worked at the Packard Plant 100 years ago. This is a very meaningful site to people that have
very much so,
nostalgic feelings, like driving by the plant, going to work with their parents. So it's much more than just another real estate deal.
Do you take that, it's almost like a responsibility?
Question, yeah. We talk about ourselves as being stewards of this.
Yeah.
You know, so with the city in partnership to make sure this is done right and it has long-term commitment to the city.
You mentioned a moment ago, it's so close to the bridge too. It was kind of,
right.
It seems strange to hear that.
Right, so when we first started looking at, so we're working with a group called Signature Associates, which is one of the leading industrial brokerage firms. And when they did their analysis, a couple things came up. It's one of the few sites that has an active rail spur at the site. And it's about 11 minutes from the new bridge, the Gordie Howe Bridge, which provides logistical access for commerce.
Intriguing for some potential businesses.
Absolutely, no question. I mean, that's just, and when you talk about time to move goods in and out, and you have that kind of access to internationally, it's a big pro for the site.
Yeah, Brandon, this is 60%. Has the city already worked on what might happen for the other 40% down the road?
We have not, right? We understand that the development team has interest in expanding and continuing the vision across the entire
Let's
site.
crawl before we can walk.
Exactly. Right. So we're still looking forward to working with this team on the south side of the facility. And if things, go well, there's an opportunity for them to expand to the north, or also other opportunities for us to get diversification on the site.
From the city side, is that, do you kind of just dream about, I think businesses might find it very beneficial to jump in this? We've seen, like we mentioned, the old train station and what's happened there around that, all kinds of the incubus of a lot of different businesses. Do you see that sort of thing happening here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can point to various projects, even most recently Future of Health, right? Like the co-location of Michigan State, the Pistons, and Henry Ford Hospital. So yes, we are looking for that level of synergy to take place in this neighborhood also.
Yeah, I was going to say,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say we see this as a very significant placemaking impact that'll have catalytic broad impact. We had property owners come up to us at the press conference who have properties like 2 miles away on Bellevue who are all excited. Because all of a sudden, boom, you've got this huge investment and it sort of lifts the boats. I don't know, from
Rising
the
tide lifts all
There
boats.
you go. Thank you. Yeah.
There's a cliche in there somewhere. Before I let you go, Oren and Mark, tell me about how people can still, at this point in the process, do you have a website where maybe they can go drop a note? Here's what I'm thinking, my thoughts, that kind of thing?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a website. It's packardpark.com, as it sounds. And there's a note field there. Just put your name and email, and if you want to stay in touch or have a specific interest, please don't hesitate, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Awesome.
And we're just starting to have community meetings and events, and people will be hearing a lot about it over the next year. So we really encourage folks to come out. And
Well, one thing I can tell you is everybody's rooting for you. That's for that's for
Appreciate
sure.
it. Thank you
Guys,
very
thanks so much
Jason.
for being here. It's a great
thank you very
discussion.
much.
My pleasure.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Guys, 4 things coming up right after this on Flashpoint. Finally, this morning, today's December 7th. And while September 11th, 2001 is a fresher date in our minds, this was the day Americans took time every year for so long to remember so many who were lost in an attack on United States soil. A date that will live in infamy is what President Franklin Roosevelt called it in 1941 after the Japanese launched a surprise attack on U.S. naval forces in Pearl Harbor there in Hawaii. This morning, 4 things you might not know about that attack that forced the U.S. into World War II. Let's first go by the numbers. 2,403 people died that day, 68 of whom were civilians. 33 of the 102 ships stationed at Pearl were hit, 7 were sunk, 5 of those were battleships, 3 of those battleships were a total loss. The Japanese thought they were crippling the U.S. fleet that day, but instead, they just woke a sleeping giant. By January, 134,000 Americans had enlisted in the military. Second, the toll on families was unmerciful. There were 37 groups of brothers serving on the USS Arizona, plus a father and son, a total of 78 men. 23 sets of brothers died that day, along with the father and son. Just 15 of those men survived. That devastating blow is the reason the U.S. military changed its policy of letting family members serve together in the same outfit or on the same ship. Third, veterans who were on the Arizona and survived had the option to be buried there when they died later on. They were allowed to have their ashes buried beneath one of the sunken gun turrets on the ship there. And at last check, at least 44 veterans had been laid to rest there, the most recent in 2019. And fourth, if you've ever visited Pearl Harbor, you may have noticed spots of oil in the water. They talk about this when you're there on the tour. That's because the Arizona had been fully fueled before the attack, which led to the massive explosions along Battleship Row. Of that 1.5 million gallons of fuel, enough still remains that 9 quarts of oil still spills into the harbor every day. If you ever do get the chance to go to Hawaii, by the way, make sure you visit Pearl Harbor and the Arizona. It was one of the most moving experiences of my life to read all of those names lost and to honor their sacrifice. That's Flashpoint on this December 7th. Later this month, we're going to be revisiting the biggest political stories of the year. Drop me an email. Let me know what you think was the biggest story or moment of the year. Flashpoint at clickondetroit.com is the address. I'm Jason Colthorpe. See you later.